All right, welcome everybody. This is our December Luncheon Lab. Measure, manage, and maximize your brand relationships. I am Reggie Holmes with Enthuse Creative, the founder and creative director there, where we help businesses to build their brands from the inside out, focusing on strategy and design services. I'm glad you all could be here, and we'll jump right into our topic for today on brand relationships and our objectives and outcomes that we hope to achieve from our time together. First, I want to introduce you to the brand value spectrum, which is a framework that I developed for working with customers and clients to be able to help them assess where they are in terms of their brand's perceived value to their customers. So it's a tool that can be used throughout your organization. And it's a very simple framework just to be able to understand sort of where you are and then also discover ways to move to the next level of a deeper and enhanced brand value for your clients. And I also want to equip you with some tools and some tactics to be able to look at your brand's value and grow that actually in the eyes of your customers. So that's what we hope to accomplish today. I'd like to start with giving you a couple of questions to think about. One, where is the hidden value in brand relationships for my business? Oftentimes people think about branding in terms of what they are expressing, what they are communicating. It's something that they put out or share out to the world. With the idea of relationships, that view is very one-sided. In any relationship, it's never just about, well, what am I putting out? It's also about what am I receiving from the other person that I'm in the relationship with. And so choosing to look at our brands through the lens of relationships forces us to think a little bit more about what's happening on the other side in terms of the brand and the experience more so or as much as the expression. And then the follow-up question is, where are the opportunities to grow my brand relationships in an impactful way? And as we'll talk about today, I just believe the idea of brands and customers' relationships with our brands is undervalued. It's not something that is emphasized enough. And it's becoming more and more relevant because of the way that we think about brands, which is very much in terms of relationships. It's I read an article today about how it's akin to the way that we think of relationships with people. And it's much the same way as far as it relates to how we engage with brands. So with these questions in mind, we'll continue, but these are things that I want for you as business owners, as practice owners to think about and sort of have in the back of your mind as we go through this material. So we'll talk about the importance and value of brand relationships. So brand relationships, this is how your brand is perceived, is how your brand is received. And so what do I mean by that? How your brand is viewed and understood and perceived, that has everything to do with, how your brand is actually received, adopted by the customers. So if you have a low perception, your brand's not going to achieve wide adoption in terms of the marketplace. If people either aren't able to see you, which speaks to visibility, or are able to see you but are not clear about who you are, what you're all about, those things are going to hinder how well your brand is received and adopted and actually chosen. Because when we talk about brands and relationships, people are choosing to engage with your brand or not. And they're using all the different touch points to gather information that they're making a decision based on. So your perception, your relationships, your reputation is sort of a part of this conversation. I like the word perception but all of that is reflected in your relationships. And so that's your brand in action. There's what I like to call the brand on paper, and then there's the brand in action, how it actually shows up in the world. It's very much a two-way street, as I alluded to earlier. A connection is not just one way. The communication is not just one way. The brand speaking to the customer. In our marketplace today, there's very much the opportunity for customers to speak back to the brand. And so the spectrum is the tool designed to help you understand how your brand is viewed and perceived, so you can develop strategies and implement tactics that challenge and change that perception. So it's all about helping you understand where you are and then think through ways that you can get to the next level or get to a different level. And here's an additional question for you to think about. Is the brand that you designed, and hopefully you went through some kind of strategic process as you developed your brand. And I understand that our business brands are always in development, right? We create them at some point, but they are always evolving. Evolving is the word I like to use. So your brand, 2 years ago, December 2019, it probably looks and communicates a little bit differently now, hopefully in December 2021. It's a result of changes within your business and also changes that are external to your business. We don't escape being, impacted by those things that are happening in the world, in the marketplace. So hopefully, the way that your brand was existing then has evolved to, deal with the realities of where we are now. If you built your brand, we all start in essence at the same place. And if you've, developed a strategy that allows your brand to evolve, the goal is that you can continue to move down that brand value spectrum. And this framework has everything to do with the perception of your customer. So it's not so much how I think about my brand or what I assume. To make it really work, we have to get data from customers. That's what really allows us to test our theories that we have about how we're perceived. So again, it's just a framework that is going to help us understand, how do customers view my brand? So let's go. What is the brand value spectrum that I've been talking about? So it's really just a simple framework. It's a system to gain insight into how customers view our brand. And I have this other framework that's called the grand brand equation. And it says visible times viable equals valuable. And the spectrum is a more elaborate way to sort of showcase this idea of brand value. On one end is seen, then it goes to known, understood, valued, trusted, and referred. And this sort of reflects the level of value that your brand can have as it relates to any particular customer. And you start off obviously on the end with seen. That's speaking to the first sort of exposure that someone has, right? All the way over to referred. We don't refer people that we we don't trust. We wouldn't tell someone else to go use a service that we haven't had a good experience with. And it's a spectrum, but it's not exactly a straight line. Sometimes you begin not necessarily at seen, but the idea of that is that anybody can be seen. All it takes is a logo or an ad or something to just kind of be out there to be seen. Oh, I've seen that ad before. Or I've seen that logo before. How many times have you watched a commercial, for example, and you've seen the commercial before, but you don't even really know what is being advertised, or something like that. So that happens often. We are saturated with images and messages. So seen and known is kind of on one end, but we really want to get to where the most value is being trusted by that customer, and then being able to be referred by that customer. So, so this is just the, an introduction to the framework. As I said, it's giving us an idea of how our people are responding to our brand as it shows up in the market. And so, starting off with seen, going all the way to referred, going back to my brand equation, visible, the first three sort of speak to that idea of being visible. And the last three speak more to the idea of being viable, being understood, valued, trusted, and then ultimately referred as a great solution to a problem that the customers are having. And so we can see how we move, if we can amplify each, that's going to multiply ultimately our value. And there's sort of personal value, which is kind of there in the middle, but valuable means on the biggest scale, on a larger level, like not just valued by individual customers, but overall being seen as a value add brand. So, and we don't have many folks, but we do, so if you have a question, feel free to, I guess the best way would be to just interrupt me, and, unmute and ask your question. We are able to kind of do that a little bit more than other times, just because there's not a lot of folks on the Zoom today. I know Pamela came in, so welcome. And we're right in the middle of just going through our topic. So understanding the brand value spectrum, you've kind of seen it introduced. Simple way to understand, okay, my relationships, how's my brand being perceived by my customers? Now, understanding it, let's dig into it a little bit more. So seen speaks to the idea of being visible, as I mentioned, in the marketplace, as sort of a superficial recognition. And that could be, hey, I saw your ad one time, I saw your logo, I've seen this business card, I've seen that website. That's the most basic level of relationship. I recognize your face, but I don't know you, right? I've never had a conversation with you. I've never even heard your voice or heard you speak, but I've seen your face. You're not unfamiliar to me. Known, right? If we sort of think about this as personal relationships, it makes even more sense. So someone that I've had a conversation with that person. I've heard their voice. I've run into them multiple times. This is where the visual identity. So something I've seen has aligned with something that I've heard or something that I've read. That there's a more distinct identity that's being formed with the brand. Understood, you've added some context. So not only do I know that you are some type of in the healing arts or a practitioner, but you are massage therapist, and not just any massage therapist, but you work specifically in Linda's case with folks who are undergoing cancer treatment. So that is adding more color, more context to someone that's seen and known, or to that brand relationship. So there's less confusion, more clarity around your market, your audience, and what exactly it is that you're offering. So for a lot of folks, getting to the point of just being understood for small businesses is a big deal. So people know that, I'm not just like your graphic designer, but that I do branding and design. And so I'm a brand strategist. So I can actually help you with everything from mission and vision and value statement to, yes, we can build your website. We can, redesign your logo. So I know for me, that's a big deal. Just getting to the point of being understood. But to me, the biggest transition sort of happens when you're able to go from understood to valued. That means that you have a competitive, differentiated entity and offering. So people understand not only who you are, how you're different, but where exactly you add specific value. At this point, once they've understood and gotten to the point of value, they typically have made a purchase or at least deeply inquired. And they've considered you alongside some other options. And they're able to say, I went with this company because of these reasons. So the things that have differentiated you from others that they might have been considering, it's become even more clear. And they valued those things to the point where they felt comfortable going with you over against those other options. So trusted is obviously taking that into account, but now this is at the point when they've come back, right? Or maybe because of the nature of what it is that they purchased or what it is that they valued, they made a really large purchase, right? That required multiple steps, or they've decided to become a repeat customer. Trust is typically identified with a repeat customer, and I like to say they're chosen without competition. So at the value stage, they've made a decision to buy in light of competition. When they trust you, there's not really any competition. There's nowhere else they would go. There's nobody else that they would entrust that particular need to than your brand. And then referred is, again, probably the most valuable for the business, because not only do you have this trusted customer, but they're willing to vouch for you to others, and they are now activated as an ambassador and advocate for your brand. So at this point, the value is not just in the one person, it's in all the people that they refer you to. So you can see how on the seen end of the spectrum, it requires a lot of volume in terms of you being seen by a lot of people. But on the referred end of the spectrum, one or two people that are activated in referring you, now they are the ones that are producing the volume in terms of all the people that they're telling about the great job that you do, about their positive experience with your brand. So in the beginning, there's a lot of work on the business owner, on the brand owner end, to try to be seen by as many people as possible. But on the referred end, that weight has sort of been taken off of your shoulders a little bit, because you've been able to move through all these levels of brand value. And then, now you're activating these other people who are able to amplify you to all the people in their network. So this is kind of breaking it down a little bit. You will be able to get access to the slides and also to a recording of this workshop. So if you weren't able to get everything, that's totally okay. You'll be able to work through it a little bit later. So brand value and the customer journey. So this is not unlike the customer journey that many of you might be familiar with. I just want to sort of touch on how they are similar and then also how they're different. So customer journey models are typically focused on conversion. So their focus is really transactional, and it has, again, a lot to do with what you're doing and what you're producing as the business. But the brand value spectrum model is focused on connection. So at each of the points that we just talked about, there's powerful things that are happening in terms of your connection, your relationship with the business owner. I mean, between the business and the customer. And so the focuses are different. They're similar, and we'll look at a slide next that sort of shows some overlap. But relationship and connection are great predictors and indicators of what your customers are thinking, what they're feeling, and then also future activity. So very important to keep that in mind. It kind of nicely overlaps with the customer journey, but it's a little bit different. So if you're not muted, if you don't mind muting, just getting a little bit of feedback, so that'd be excellent.
Oh, I just unmuted. I just wanted
Oh
to,
yeah, go ahead, Pam.
ask somewhat of a question.
Sure.
So that's why I was thinking how you can not predict, but interpret your how customers perceive you. And you're saying that it's by, judging. It's a subjective judgment of the connections you have with them. So how can you tell how you're being perceived? That's the question.
Sure. So a little bit later, we'll sort of talk about some specific ways that we can measure that and sort of assess that. That's a great question. I would say, 10 minutes, we'll spend a little bit more time on that. But it is subjective. I think the goal is to get a number of data points. And there's some interpretation that's going to be required for you as a business owner, but the goal is to be able to get as many salient data points and draw some conclusions from that, along with some other metrics. So, great
Reggie,
question. Yes.
could I ask a question here? Are
Yeah,
you
go
going
ahead,
to
Jimmy.
address the need for consistency versus the need to change up so you're fresh?
Yes, I will make sure that I touch on that. So, yes, and again, think of these things in terms of relationships. So, the effort that you put out in terms of trying to be seen or known or even understood, the rhythm of that is different if you're at a place where you are already trusted and already being referred. If I trust you, been a long time customer, I'm actually referring other people to your business. If you as a business or a brand, if you're messaging to me like you want to be seen by me, I'm going to be turned away by that, right? Because we're already at a place where I'm entrusting my business to you. I'm a repeat customer. I expect you, just like in a human relationship, if we've been, on the same page for a long time, if we've been in relationship with each other and connected, I'm expecting you to speak to me a certain way. If you're trying to get my business for the first time or like increase my or create awareness of you from me, I expect you to sort of speak to me a different way. There's a little bit more activity that's involved. So you do need to be consistent, but that rhythm of communication is not necessarily going to be the same for everyone. That's why this is really helpful to sort of know, okay, how many of my customers are or the people that I'm trying to reach like new, right? They don't know anything about me. And so my attention is on awareness at that point. But for people that are already customers, they're rock solid, right? They trust you, they're referring people to you. You don't need to do the same type or frequency of communication. It's going to be different. And so this model kind of helps you think through who fits where, and then how do I need to message to them to give them what they need out of the relationship, right? So here's a typical customer journey model, and then the brand value spectrum sort of at the bottom. And so as you can see, this is designed to get them to purchase, sort of what collateral, what content is needed. And then after purchase, there's a lot of other things that are nurturing that relationship that's been formed. But, this is definitely speaking to the idea of getting them to purchase and then sort of positioning other things after that to get them to stay in your network, stay connected. And so this is, I like this because it gives you some idea of what types of content pieces you can create and use. But this doesn't necessarily speak to what is happening in terms of the relationship with the customer. This is sort of the action that you want them to take. But I like to put it in relational terms because that's how people think of their engagement with brands. And it's just different than, you know, what I want them to do for me, or the action that I want them to take. So this is much more about sentiment and thinking and approach. So the reality is that customer buying habits have changed, and you know, when you add the customer journey with the data that using the framework brings you, it helps you see, okay, they're on a journey, but it's not just a journey of um, getting them to buy and then, you know, sort of keeping them in the loop so they buy again. It's a journey of relationship, and it aligns with how people think about how they relate to brands. So that's why it's particularly helpful. So it's, you know, what I guess I'm advocating is not one or the other. It's using both of them sort of in tandem to gain even more insight into not only what your customer might be doing, but also how they're thinking and feeling. So this is that slide. If there's, you know, any questions or anything, we can stay here or, you know, move forward to, so using the brand value spectrum. So it's useful in all areas of your business. So thinking about how we use this model internally, with your staff and stakeholders, for example, it gives your sales, marketing, and operations teams insight into how your brand is being perceived and received in the marketplace. And it allows you to be intentional and proactive in addressing gaps. For example, if you find that most people feel like they understand your business and what you do, but there's a gap in terms of how much they value that and are willing to go from, I sort of understand you amongst all these other options, but I'm not quite ready to choose your brand, or I don't feel like connected enough to take the next step. How do we get them there? You know, that there's ways that can be addressed through marketing. There's ways that can be addressed through sales. And so this kind of puts everybody in a place where they're looking at some similar data and kind of speaking the same language and thinking about, how do we address this from a relational standpoint, not just from a transactional standpoint. Externally, dealing with customers and collaborators helps you more easily identify and message around the areas of the most value for your customer. Like, what is the highest value for them? Because part of the Q&A, you know, when you're gathering information using this framework, is asking people what's most valuable for you. You know, what would be the valuable thing that will help take you from this stage to the next stage. And then for executive teams, it gives them valuable data in terms of how to make decisions about moving the brand forward. Again, if, you know, brands are like, they're in relationships with people. They're not things that you sort of set and forget. They have to evolve as the market changes, as customer mood and sentiment changes. And there's a great stat that talks about the value of a connected customer. I believe the number is 94% of you know, people that feel connected would refer to others. So addressing things in terms of connection is really important if you want to get to a point where you have customers that that advocate enough to want to refer you to others. So it's just giving you tools to think about it in terms of relationships. So So 5 ways to enhance brand value. This is also, as we're sort of thinking about, all right, well, what do we do with this? How do we, how do we actually put this in this practice? How do we, make this more practical? So a couple of things that will help enhance the brand value and again, give you more data points to be able to add to this tool. Consider using a CRM. There are many different kinds out there, and to address, and automate some of the functions related to brand value and just customer relationships, right? Like, and the goal is that you have people in the appropriate place in your funnel, in your system, on your back end, whatever tools you're using. You sort of know where they are in terms of, all right, this is someone that we're messaging to a particular way because they're on the left end of the spectrum. They are just sort of building their relationship with us. Again, someone on the right end of the spectrum where they've already passed through value, they trust us. How do we message to them to get them to go from their personal trust relationship with us to activating this person as a referral partner, right? Your CRM can help you do that. So matching up your different content offerings, we looked at the customer journey to where clients say they are on the brand value spectrum and to what they say would be valuable to them. Again, when you are doing the assessment, you're gonna ask them, okay, what's most valuable in our relationship with you, our brand's relationship with you? What's been the most valuable thing and what will continue to be the most valuable thing? Because we want to stay in our relationship with you, but we want to progress that relationship. We want to move that from the point of understanding to trust. We want to move that from or understanding to value to trust, and trust to referral. And then systemize how you communicate and connect with customers around these areas of shared value. As you get them to talk about what they value, you're able to share back, again, that two-way street idea, what's really valuable to you as a brand, and create those areas of shared value. Where there's shared value, there's connection. And then create rhythms and routines. How often do you do that? There's no sort of set way. Some people, it's going to make sense to check in, once a year. For some people, it'll make sense to check in quarterly. You really have to decide based on your business, and how high touch it is or is not, how you want to engage in. But that's a question that you need to ask them routinely, like where is the value for both of us? You have value, for example, in, let's say you have a new product or a new offering, new service. That's valuable to you, but it may not be valuable to your customers. So you need to figure out where you can align things that are valuable for you and valuable for them. So analyze, for yourself, what makes you feel connected to brands, and start with the 3 or 4 that you have a strong relationship with. So, as business owners, we all have brands that we personally have these levels of relationships with. And so for a few of them, think about what are the brands that you are on the right side of the spectrum with personally, and think about what are the characteristics of either how they communicate, how they have made an effort to connect with you. What's the nature of that communication like now that you are on this end of the spectrum with them? And think about how you can apply that in your own business. So that's the beauty of being, yes, we're business owners, but also a consumer in the same marketplace, right? We're not above sort of being on the other side of it in our own personal lives. So there's a lot of data that we can gain just from thinking about our own relationships with brands, because we all have them. And then lastly, read articles, studies, and surveys. Like I'm a marketer, so I do that, but it's just really insightful anyway. Even if you're not in the branding marketing industry, just learn about what are consumer trends, what are sentiments, what are people thinking and feeling, and these are some resources where they're always publishing great research about customer sentiment, about brand sentiment, how people feel about brands, what's turning them on, what's turning them off, about the way that brands are behaving, and just how they feel about the nature of their relationships with brands. So those are 5 sort of ways to enhance brand value as you think about adding that to the brand value spectrum. And so practically assess, analyze, and take action. So what you can do, ask your current customers, where were you on the spectrum when you first engaged or decided to work with our company? Assuming that most people are, have seen you or understood you or known about you, there may be some that are on that far left end, but assuming that most people have, seen and known, when did they first start to understand? That's going to be where a lot of people start their journey. But ask them where they were, and I would say start with 5 good current or previous customers, and then ask them what is currently most valuable to them in their relationship with your business or with your brand. So that's one data point. And then think about 5 new customers going into 2022, 5 new people that you work with that are, not in your list of clients right now that you're not currently serving. Ask them where they are on the spectrum as they're deciding to work, with your company. So at the point of onboarding or having those discovery meetings, deciding if you're going to work together, get that data about where they feel they are, show them the spectrum and say, okay, we're just trying to track and measure our brand relationships because we want to maximize this relationship. We want to make the most of it for you and for us. And we know that finding those areas of shared value is what's going to allow us to do that. We don't want to continue to push products and services that people don't want. We want to align what's valuable to us with what's valuable to our customers. And then you can also ask them what will be the most important thing to move them from where they rank themselves today to the next stage in the spectrum, to the next phase. So that will give you some good data points in terms of where to start. Record that. Make sure that you these are questions that have to be asked to the customer. There's obviously conversations about price and, exactly what deliverables will be involved, all those sorts of things. You need to still continue to do that. But if you're wanting to get more insight in terms of the relationship that you have with your clients and with your customers, these are some great questions to ask. So that's all I have in terms of the presentation. Investing in your brand relationships is a great thing to do. It's going to be valuable to your business. If nothing else, it's going to give you great insight in terms of what you've done well, and then also what you can do better. And again, as I said earlier, where you can create shared value, you could create connection. And when you create connection, you get more than just the transaction. You get the relationship, and the relationship is going to be ultimately what's really valuable over time as people move through the spectrum. So that's what we have in terms of the workshop. I do want to let people know that there is an opportunity to have a free consultation with me if you'd like to talk more about the brand value spectrum, how to maybe use it, if there's any specific insights or questions that you have, or you want to learn how to implement it. There's definitely an opportunity to do that, and I'd be happy to meet with anybody that joined us today. So I will stop my sharing. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have. I really appreciate your attention and time. And thank you guys for coming out. Thank you, Pam. Thanks, Carolyn. Any questions that anybody has?